Welcome to D3 TV News at 7:30. This is The Source.
Good evening and welcome back to The Source. It's Wednesday, February 15th, and I'm Robert Sherman.
And I'm Kylie Rippey.
After a short break, The Source is back for the semester with your latest campus news. Tonight's top story is focusing on sexual assault and who is responsible for handling sexual assault cases. D3 TV's Tilly Marlatt has the story.
The annual Fire and Safety Report, or better known as the Cleary Report, published in October of 2016, identified an increase in sexual assault cases at DePauw University. What's more troubling than the lack of discussion and understanding of sexual assault on college campuses is the lack of accountability amongst universities in handling sexual assault cases. Putnam County Prosecutor Tim Bookwalter discusses his problem with the way cases are handled.
Well, on college campuses, because of Title IX, sexual assaults, they have to look out for the rights of the victim and the rights of the alleged perpetrator. So the problem I have is that they basically notify or tip off the alleged perpetrator. They send him usually an email, give him a no contact order, say he's not to have any contact. At that point they know what's going on. It's usually the next day or a number of days later that they're actually interviewed. By that point they've called home, they've talked to lawyers. We've lost our window of opportunity to really interview somebody.
Renee Madison, the Title IX coordinator at DePauw, explains the process through which sexual assault cases are handled by the university.
The criminal process, we have a report of a crime and we are investigating whether you want to participate or not. And the trauma-informed approach that we take here on campus does not require that immediate process to begin.
Right. Former State Senator Christina Hale discussed the handling of cases by the university in comparison to the criminal justice system.
Somehow should we work out a better process where the university can continue to do that role, but law enforcement gets flagged. Not campus police, but like people to say like, okay, and we have two parallel processes happening because the university has other obligations and responsibilities and vulnerabilities to lawsuits and all of that. Law enforcement, it's only their job to figure out was a crime committed and should be prosecuted.
I think an outside agency needs to come in, because if an outside agency came in, we don't have to worry about Title IX. We don't have to follow their rules. They're constricted under these rules. Let us do it, and then we don't have to worry about those rules. My problem is, and I've always felt, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter if you're a college student, everybody ought to be treated the same. We've had a conviction, and it was a random person who went in the inn at DePauw and tried to rape somebody. He was immediately, with no Title IX, DePauw and us interviewed him. We got a confession, we got a conviction, and he's doing 50 years right now in prison. Everybody should be treated the same. If you're a frat boy at DePauw, there shouldn't be a different set of rules than the 21-year-old guy working at one of our local factories.
And I do think that it's really important that the university has a strong partnership with the prosecutor's office as well as with our public safety office.
I guess what we have to really figure out and have it is what is the university's role, and I don't think we've gotten it right, and what is law enforcement's role.
For D3 TV's The Source, I am Tilly Marlatt.
Over winter term, changes were made to the President's cabinet with the resignation of Anthony Jones, Vice President of Enrollment Admissions. According to President McCoy, Hill's resignation stemmed from the distance away from his family, who were currently residing in Tennessee during the time of his employment. Cindy Babington will take over as Vice President of Enrollment Admissions. D3 TV's Riley Miller spoke with the President McCoy to find out more.
But the problem is that this year we have two new variables that we've never had before. Well, three if we count switching VPs in the middle, but on the national level, this is the first year of prior pride. And so it used to be that in order to file your FAFSA, You used your prior year's tax form. Therefore, you couldn't file your FAFSA until you did last year's taxes. Now, you can use your prior tax form. So that means that you can file your FAFSA a lot earlier, and you can put in for admission a lot earlier. So our admission numbers are up, which we want them to be. Or are they just early? You don't know until the cycle's been run. So that's question number one. Challenge number two for us has been that this year IU joined our Common App. So that's a great thing. Yeah, and we're happy that IU's joined our Common App, because now it used to be that if you were going to apply to IU and then you decided to apply to DePauw, you had to fill out a whole new form. Now you just click a little button and it's done. Well, that's a great thing, except how much of the increase in our applications are because IU is in the Common App, in which case those are probably soft apps, versus how many of the increase in applications are because people are genuinely interested directly in DePauw, in which case those would be more firm apps. We don't know the answer to those two questions.
At the conclusion of winter term, Panhellenic and Interfraternity Council hosted recruitment. This comes after a change in the recruitment date ordered by administration in the fall of 2016. Smaller class size caused fewer students to go through the recruitment process, and of the 214 men eligible to participate, only 150 actually went through the process. D3TV will continue to investigate what smaller pledge classes mean for sororities and fraternities on campus.
After an extensive 6-month process, DePauw will unveil the university's new brand tomorrow in Peeler Auditorium at 8:15 a.m., 11:30 a.m., and 2:45 p.m. Next week's edition of The Source will provide an in-depth glance at what this means for the university moving forward.
Nolan Security has officially resigned from working as a security force with DePauw fraternities. This change brought with it new rules for fraternities hosting parties, including no hard alcohol during parties, as well as fraternities must register parties the Friday 1 week prior to their event.
After President Trump discussed revoking the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA policy, there has been debate surrounding the topic in colleges across the United States. Numerous schools are deciding whether or not they should identify themselves as a sanctuary campus. In December, President McCoy issued a statement declaring that DePauw is not a sanctuary campus, but will practice what it means to be one. The news comes after an overwhelming amount of faculty, as well as students, voted to declare DePauw as a sanctuary campus. D3TV's Natalie Brunini interviewed students to gain their perspective on the issue.
Despite the overwhelming amount of support from faculty and students, administrators have decided against the labeling of DePauw as a sanctuary campus because of the risks involved. For example, the removal of federal loans, which Congress has proposed to schools who adopt the label. Yet despite the potential problems, students and faculty still want to see DePauw identify itself as a sanctuary campus. Here's what a few of DePauw's students had to say in response to the ruling.
So I understand DePauw's decision in a way, but it's somewhat of a catch-22 in that either way that you go, there's going to be very big consequences and advantages too. And I think that's hard. That's a hard line to walk, and there's not a correct answer. DePauw has a lot of work to do about bridging gaps. There's usually, I feel like, some sort of wall between, maybe international students or a lack of diversity on campus already, and it might make us come off as a little less welcoming, but at the same time I think DePauw tries really hard to try and make people feel welcome, but your intentions don't always translate into your actions.
I don't agree with their decision, but then again, I understand why they chose to not declare themselves as a sanctuary campus, because, without federal funds, then DePauw wouldn't be DePauw.
I don't know, I think there just can be more that could have been done. I think a lot of students are really scared for their status, and I don't really know if DePauw has made their plan clear for what will happen if ICE comes. don't know. I mean, I understand their decision, but I don't know. I think the label would have made a lot more students feel comfortable and safe, and I think it was worth the risk of ICE coming if we took a stand against them, because either way you're going to go to court if they come to, you know, ask for students' status. So I don't know.
Today, the university announced a gift from 2 alumni to begin construction of a new Center for Diversity and Inclusion at DePauw. The 10,000-square-foot facility will be located on Hannah Street, just north of the Richard E. Peeler Art Center, and will house both AAAS and Dorothy Brown, as well as include new common space for campus programming. A groundbreaking ceremony will be scheduled soon, and construction will continue throughout the spring and summer, with an estimated completion date in August.
We're going to take a quick break, but after the commercial, we will be discussing the renovation of the Union Building. Continue to stay tuned to The Source.
You say it like that. Got me falling right back.
Good evening and welcome to The Source. Entertainment news on The Source. Welcome back to sports news on The Source. Back to The Source. Welcome back to entertainment news on The Source.
Welcome back to sports news on The Source.
I'm Kylie Rippey. I'm Megan Mannering.
I'm Josh Crazy.
I'm Vicky Pislarides. I'm Allie Grimm. I'm Chili Marlatt.
When you say it like that.
Want to watch all of these or learn how to make your own show? Go to d3tv.org at any time.
Welcome back to The Source. D3 TV's Vanessa Ballas is live in the studio to discuss the renovations to the Union Building. Vanessa, when are the renovations to the hub projected to be completed?
Hi Kylie, the renovations for the hub are projected to be completed by spring break of 2017. The indoor renovations are expected to be done by the end of 2017. However, they are still waiting for confirmation about whether or not the furniture will be in by the end of spring break.
Vanessa, you've mentioned a lot of those dates, but has the team faced many complications or setbacks throughout the reconstruction process?
Thankfully, they haven't faced many complications throughout the process due to the collaboration that they've had with the other departments that are going to be using the space.
Now, Vanessa, have there been any in-field complications that the workers have had to face, and if so, what were they?
There have been many in-field complications, but the complications have been minimal due to that collaboration. They've stemmed from combining the old elements of the building that they would like to keep with some of the new ideas that they have for the space itself.
And so upon completion, what does the university hope to do with this space?
The university hopes that the space turns into programmable student space that they can use for extracurricular activities in the afternoons and evenings. And then during the day, they hope that it's a lounge type of environment where students can go to relax and unwind and do their work.
All right, thank you, Vanessa. Continue to stay tuned to The Source. After this break, Riley Miller will be live in the studio with your latest entertainment news. We'll be right back.
You say it like that. Got me falling right back.
Good evening and welcome to The Source. Entertainment news on The Source. Welcome back to sports news on The Source. Back to The Source. Welcome back to entertainment news on The Source.
Welcome back to sports news on The Source.
I'm Kylie Rippey. I'm Megan Mannering.
I'm Josh Crazy.
I'm Vicky Pislarides. I'm Allie Grimm. I'm Chili Marlatt.
When you say it like that.
Want to watch all of these or learn how to make your own show? Go to d3tv.org at any time.
Good evening and welcome back to The Source. I'm Riley Miller and here's a look at what's going on at DePauw. Lily Wright, a professor of English at DePauw, recently published her second novel titled Dancing with the Tigers. The book is a finalist for the Edgar Allan Poe Award. A few members of the DePauw Chamber Symphony spent 9 days over winter term touring England. The ensemble traveled to London, Oxford, and Bath. They performed 2 concerts in London, one at Oxford University and one at St. Michael's Church in Bath. For many of the students, this was a glimpse at what their future careers will look like. What an amazing experience. Happy birthday, DePauw! On January 10th, DePauw celebrated its 180th anniversary as an institution. In 1837, a new institution by the name of Indiana Asbury University was created. The institution was named in the honor of Bishop Francis Asbury of the Episcopal Methodist Church. 180 years later, Indiana Asbury University is now known as DePauw University, a university that continues to be conducted on most liberal principles. For all of you fellow knitters, the Hartman House has good news. Knitting lunch is back every Thursday from 11:30 to 12:30 at the Hartman House. Knitters of all levels are welcome to attend. Supplies are available for those just beginning. The Prindle Institute for Ethics will be hosting a panel discussing ways to contact local, state, and federal representatives to make your voice heard. The event will take place in the Dasky Room in Hoover Hall tomorrow, February 16th from 11:30 to 12:30. Free lunch will be provided, and students are encouraged to RSVP online. For students interested in studying off-campus for the spring of 2018 semester, applications are due to the Hubbard Center by Friday, February 17th. That's all the entertainment news for tonight. Coming up, Allie Grimm will give you the latest news on DePauw Tiger sports. I'm Riley Miller. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You've now joined D3TV, the most successful student organization involving television on campus.
Can I get involved with D3TV now?
No. D3TV is one of the longest-running student organizations on campus and has recently shown considerable growth with online media and content.
Can I get involved in D3TV now?
Not so fast! There's still plenty for you to learn about editing, creating content, marketing, interviewing, using a microwave, and hands-on experience with your peers and professors. Sounds like a lot of
Hoopla!
Sounds like
Hoopla! Hoopla! Hoopla!
Sounds like an awful lot of hoopla about a college television network.
To get involved with D3TV, contact us online, or just come in at our offices located at the Pulliam Center for Contemporary Media.
Welcome back to The Source. I'm Allie Grimm, and here's what's happening with DePauw Tiger sports. The William J. Fenlon Fund was recently announced with an impressive $410,000 included in the fund. The fund was named after head basketball coach Bill Fenlon. This is Fenlon's 25th season with DePauw, and he is the winningest men's basketball coach with 412 victories. The idea behind the fund is to support student-athlete travel, especially with the international competition and other cultural opportunities. This past weekend, the DePauw women's basketball team traveled to Gambier, Ohio to take on Kenyon College, going into the weekend with a 21-1 overall record and a regular season conference title. The Tigers fell 70-64 on Saturday. Claire Ryan led the team with 15 points, followed by Taylor Howard, who totaled 14 points. The team will travel to Oberlin College this weekend in their final game before the NCAC tournament. Good luck, ladies. This past weekend, the Tigers men's track and field team took 5th at the DePauw Invitational, while the women's side took 4th. Outstanding performances consisted of junior Gabby Coughing taking first in the 1-meter run in a mile of 3 minutes and 26 seconds. On the men's side, we had sophomore Zach Batt take 4th in the 3-meter run in a time of 8 minutes and 58 seconds. The Tigers have an upcoming meet this Saturday at 11 a.m. The DePauw swim team placed 3rd at the North Coast Athletic Conference Championships this past weekend. Sam McManus broke the DePauw 100 breaststroke record. That's all the sports news for tonight. Here's a look at what's going on in campus crime. On Sunday at 2:21 a.m. on Larrabee Street, one subject was arrested and one subject cited by Greencastle Police Department at an overall reported by disorderly conduct, public intoxication, contributing delinquency of a minor, and providing alcohol to a minor. The case was forwarded to the prosecutor's office on Saturday at 3:56 p.m. Public safety officers issued a verbal warning to Alpha Tau Omega after items were thrown from the roof. On Friday at 12:05 p.m., a hit-and-run accident occurred. The driver was later identified and the report was filed. That's all the latest update in campus crime. Coming up next, Professor Rebecca Alexander will join us in the studio to discuss DePauw's decision to not become a sanctuary campus. Continue to stay tuned.
And in position of General Manager, Tom Crispin. Executive Producer, Katie Browning.
Do you really have what it takes to run D3 TV?
I think so. I suppose so.
I mean, you're going to have to get people like you.
Now, push it! Go! Are you serious? You are pitiful, sir. Harder! Go!
Not a favorite, nope.
Julia with a score of 12.
And Jessica with a score of 2.
May the news be ever in your favor.
Welcome back to The Source. I'm Julie Block, live in the studio with Assistant Professor of Education, Rebecca Alexander. Professor Alexander is one of the lead members of the Sanctuary Campus petition that circulated around DePauw. Professor Alexander is going to provide some insight into DePauw's decision not to become a sanctuary campus, despite the majority faculty staff vote of 84 to 12. So, Professor Alexander, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. If you could start off by just giving us a little bit of an idea of what exactly is a sanctuary campus.
So a sanctuary campus is, it varies widely in its definition. It's a pretty open term, so it can range from everything from a simple sort of statement. When we put forward the petition, we said we wanted to put a charge to the president to explore what it would mean for us to declare ourselves a sanctuary campus, but it can entail things like not turning over information on student status to authorities, to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It could entail potentially acts to sort of educate our community about what the issues facing undocumented students, but then also potentially efforts to protect undocumented students in the event that the law shifted under them in a way that made them vulnerable to deportation.
Mm-hmm. So why then, in that case, do you think DePauw decided not to do this, to not become a sanctuary campus?
I mean, I obviously am not the person who made that decision, but President McCoy has said that in consultation with university attorneys and his administration, they decided that the definition was vague enough that they didn't that they thought it might mislead people into thinking that the campus was safer than it was, that they worried that it might make us a target for potential enforcement efforts, that it might result in the withdrawal. They might not have said it might result in the withdrawal of federal funds, but that was another concern. And then those were their main sort of concerns. Yeah.
So where did this discussion surrounding a sanctuary campus begin? Where did this evolve from?
So it mainly came from a group of us in conversation. We all had sort of different motivations for where it came from. We had all been in conversations with colleagues at other campuses who were pursuing efforts to make their campuses sanctuary campuses as well. But we also had personal experiences with children who were close to us in our lives experiencing fear and, nightmares and terror at what was going on, or experiencing harassment. We had students of ours here who were incredibly anxious about themselves and their families. We had, I have community back home, children who I taught in schools who are who they and or their parents are undocumented, and so I think we all felt like it was a very personal issue for us as well.
Do you think that these students who expressed anxiety over not being a sanctuary campus, do you think that this decision not to do that has increased that anxiety?
So the students, we hadn't had students explicitly express anxiety over not being a sanctuary campus. They were expressing anxiety over the very, very amped up rhetoric around undocumented students, undocumented families, undocumented people, and then people of color more broadly. And so that was the anxiety that we'd seen. The term sanctuary campus wasn't really out there at the point where we circulated that petition. It was just beginning to happen at a bunch of different campuses. And so I think that what I've heard from sort of through the grapevine is that the decision not to declare a sanctuary campus leaves students feeling uneasy and unsupported. But I don't want to speak for students. They have an incredibly diverse range of sort of stances and opinions and positions.
Right. Yeah. What sort of long-term effects do you think that this decision not to declare ourselves a sanctuary campus will have on DePauw, perhaps even admissions in the future, students who are interested in coming here but see that we have not declared this status?
Yeah, we don't know. It's really hard to say. I feel like it is important in terms of admissions that it matters for students to see that we are taking active stances on issues that are important to us and that are vital to our sort of well-being and that go beyond our campus. And so part of the reason we wanted a sanctuary campus was to think about preparing ourselves pedagogically. How do we prepare our community for what might happen and what is happening in terms of members of our community broadly defined, right? Students, their families, their loved ones, people they care about, students my students will teach. How do we prepare our community for that? But then also, how do we be in community with other colleges and other campuses? And how do we sort of stand together? Because any one campus declaring sanctuary by themselves might be vulnerable, but if campuses across the board declare sanctuary, then you get a very strong statement. And so we felt like we wanted to be a part of making more safe space for other campuses as well. So thinking of our community as here, but then also beyond us.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you didn't obviously make this decision to not be a sanctuary campus, but do you disagree with the decision based on some of the pros and cons that the administration seems to have weighed and come up with this kind of idea that the risk of doing so is not worth the reward?
I still very, very strongly support the idea of sanctuary campus, and I think that the symbolic power of the language is important, and I think that the risk is important. I think that there are different ways and different models and different understandings of sort of how we protect our students right now and what that means. And there's going to be contestation over that. That's just part of the terrain that we're in. And one impulse is going to be to protect them by sort of to stay as quiet as possible, to not make noise, to not draw attention to ourselves. And another is going to be to take a stance of active opposition or at least of rising up and preparing ourselves for what's happening. And so there's going to be contestation over that, but I still strongly support Sanctuary Campus. Absolutely.
So then what does this mean, this decision, for students in the future if immigration custom officials, or ICE as they're better known, were to appear on our campus?
So one of the things, I mean, the administration has been clear that they do not intend to share and do not share information about student status with ICE unless there is a warrant or something legally authorizing them to do so. And if they got a warrant, they have said that that would go to their lawyers immediately and they deal with it that way. But one of the tricky things for us is that the legal terrain is shifting so fast. And so if you look at what happened with the executive order around refugees and around immigration in that case, there were 3 or 4 days of chaos before the courts and lawyers got intervened, and an enormous amount happened to families in that time. Right? Families were kept separate, children were detained, people couldn't get to their loved ones. If there were some kind of executive order that immediately sort of authorized and enabled deportation, and immigration and customs enforcement agents were to show up already with a list of names in hand onto our campus and come looking for students or demand students, would we be prepared to respond? And how would we respond? If people had a legally valid warrant, how would we respond? And one thing I said when I spoke to a class recently, if you look at the vast majority of injustices that have been committed in recent times, most of them have been committed legally, right? Slavery was a legal institution. Segregation was a legal institution. Much of what was done in Nazi Germany was done under the law. And so at what point do we prepare ourselves to stand up to laws that are in violation of basic human rights?
Right. So I know you talked about this executive order. I'd like to touch on that just a little bit. I know that various faculty and staff members recently signed and submitted a petition condemning President Trump's executive order on these 7 predominantly Muslim countries. And I did not see your name on the list of faculty in the letter that was in the DePauw. Can you tell me why your name is not on there?
Yeah, that was a mistake. It happened at the last minute. A whole group of faculty put together that letter, but I was in charge of collecting the names, and so I left my own off when I submitted it. And I submitted a correction afterwards, and I don't know if it appears in the online at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I was confused when I saw that, because I figured if you were so invested in this process, right, you would probably want your name to be on there. But some students have complained that this letter that faculty signed, coupled with an email that President McCoy sent out on January 30th to campus, also condemning the executive order. Some people believe that it silences students who do support the order, and it makes them feel as though DePauw doesn't value them or value their ideas. How would you respond to people who are unsettled by that?
I think there are always limits around the parameters of our debate. There are certain things that we have taken off the table, so to speak, in our common debate. We don't sit around in our classrooms and have debates about whether it's okay to enslave people and buy and sell them. And so we're always working on defining the parameters of sort of, and major social action has always entailed public statement by universities. Universities have taken stances historically and presently. It's part of the work we do. It doesn't mean you can't dissent. It doesn't mean you can't have your own stance and your own position and your own opinion. But education is not a neutral space. It's not ever a neutral space. And staying silent as an institution is one way of assenting to a status quo. It's one way of saying it's okay to do this, or at least to consider doing this. We think that that's within the parameters of acceptable debate. And so I think it's okay for universities to take stances and take them strongly.
Okay. So you said a little earlier that if ICE were to come to campus and have a list of names of students that were undocumented that they were going to essentially, kick out of the country, what would we do in that sort of situation? You raised that question. What do you think in that instance DePauw would do? I know you mentioned a little bit civil disobedience, and where does that come into play, and when do you, as an institution or as an individual, need to violate the law in order to achieve some sort of higher moral goal?
I think everybody makes that decision for themselves. Institutions can make it as well. But I think, if you're looking at the situation of immigration and customs enforcement and what's happening right now, for me, at the point where you are taking students, young people who have lived their entire lives in this country, who were brought here as children, who are raised, who are every bit as American as you or I am, and forcibly removing them from the country, I'm there. We're at the point where you are separating families, and so 7% of the children in the United States, 7% almost, it's like 6.4, have at least one undocumented parent. So at the point where you are splitting up families in that way, for the crime of trying to survive, right? For the crime of, what we are doing is in criminalizing immigration. Historically, it's a civil violation, but what we are doing in criminalizing it is jailing, incarcerating, deporting into incredibly dangerous situations families who fled those situations trying to get here. In the process, we're splitting up parents and children. 5.4 million of those children are U.S. citizens themselves. Right? So we are taking U.S. citizen children and stripping them from their parents for the crime of trying to economically and physically survive.
Great. Well, Professor Alexander, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate it. We will be back next week at 7:30 here on The Source, so be sure to tune in then on Channel 3 or on d3tv.org. I'm Julie Block. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.